And so the way they kind of work and manifest themselves, and they have over all this time, is called by some the machine, and that we live in a machine inside of this contrived environment. This reality is contrived reality, and the machine represents our social and cultural technological constructs that manage the reality perception of your current experience. That's everything, social, cultural, technological, everything around that says is kind of managed and organized so that you perceive it in a certain kind of way. And these controllers, these deep state kind of guys, if you kind of a nominal hierarchy of it is these otherworldly forces, whether they're the reptilians, the archons at the top, who are trying to keep all of the wars going and, and keep all of the fear and all of the pedophilia and whatever. And then there are some kind of controlling families, and maybe there are a couple of levels of them. It rather quickly works its way into very large investment firms that have the controlling interests of corporations and banks, and then into intelligence organizations, which are an adjunct and a component of the kind of the corporation, if you will, that's trying to market and proliferate this stuff. The media is tied into it directly, completely dominated, and governments and academia and science are all play in one way or another. I saw a friend of mine at lunch here in town 3 or 4 a while back, and we got into a conversation that didn't derive from the fact that he was wearing a mask, and I said, "Take your mask off," and he said, "No, I believe this," and so I began to run down some data points that established that the whole COVID thing was suspect. And he said, "Well, where do you hear all of this?" And I said, "Well, you got to look for it. It's in its places." And he said, "So why isn't it in the media?" And I said, "Well, it's because the media is controlled." And he stopped and he said, "Are you trying to tell me that you think that every one of the media is controlled?" I said, "Yeah, it was such a disconnect from his point of view, and he kind of just turned and walked away because he couldn't take it anymore, because he thought it was so stupid that you'd think that all of the media was controlled in some kind of way. Well, that's the point. The point is that this reality that we live in is a controlled and organized, controlled reality, and they have spent a long time getting to the place where they've got this kind of thing seamlessly kind of wired up in their kind of a bubble. They've been carefully controlled and orchestrated by outside forces that the extent of them planning is amazingly impressive. I'm a strategic planner, and man, I watch this stuff and look at it big wide, and I said, God, what they had to do in order to make that happen, It is really, they had to start putting fluoride in the water a long time ago with a clear idea about how they were going to orchestrate and control and influence all of humanity. Man, it's just pretty impressive what they've done. And power structure, they create reality boxes. But we all live in them. It's just an integral part of we know how business works. We know how the government's supposed to work. How you get educated. We've got all these kind of how agriculture works. We got all this stuff that we just presume that's the way it works, and they've just shoehorned us all into these kinds of things. Everyone exists within the confines of a reality construct. This is what you must first come to realize and understand, because if you don't realize it, then you remember one of the first slides where it says, you don't realize that the reality isn't what you think it is. You're blind to the reality. That's it. That there's a light that turns on here at one point, and you suddenly say, God, they're making this whole thing work in a different way. And that is one of the keys to this enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it, because if you don't understand that first, you're not in a position to then say, I'm going to change it, and I'm going to get a new reality, and I'm going to take sovereignty over who I am. And that's what the key to this new human and the emergence of the new human is extracting yourself from the system. We have allowed others to take rule over us and construct societies and cultures and reflect those rules. All of these structures are all about constraining you and driving you down a path. I mean, all you got to do is think about it a little bit, and you realize that there's not very little of it that's saying, hey, go out and have a good time, you know, just do whatever you want to do. No, they're all just trying to tell you more rules, more regulations, more everything. Because most people on the planet don't understand this. They have been to whim of those few who have known. For the reason it can be said that reality has been a rigged game, and you have not been aware of the operating kind of mechanisms. The whole thing's rigged. Every mainstream media is in. They play off each other to do fake debates and things. Everything you know or think you know is part of the game filter. This is a game, and you're inside of a game. Kind of literally is the way they talk about it. Everything you know about life is contaminated. You know, it's easy for those words to kind of go by your head, and you kind of understand in English that they make sense. But to internalize them and say, everything I know about life is contaminated, I mean, that's a really big deal. And you just better stop and think about that for a minute, because that's the essence of enlightenment and awakening and other kinds of things, is to realize that where we are right now and who you are right now is not where you got to be and where we're going to go somewhere else, because there's a whole lot of people who are never going to get to that point, and they are just going to be taken downstream, and they're going to go right wherever the river is going, and they're not going to get off when they need to. People's perceptions fall in the same bubble. There's familiarity and solidarity. Yeah, you get up in the morning and you do the same thing, and it works, right? So why in the world do you need to get outside of that, huh? Well, this is the reason why I began, because of where it's going downstream. Trust and faith in external social and cultural bodies is no longer credible. Some of us have worked our way out of religions, and so then we realize that you know, those kind of mechanisms are constraining and trying to get you dominated in some kind of way, and you can work your way through all of the aspects of social and cultural kind of processes, and you can realize that, like I say, they're all constraining. Individual perceptions are being used against you as a divisive tool. I mean, all this business about racism and multigenderism and blah, 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 all of those are mechanisms to be divisive, and so that they're trying to take perceptions of individuals and then use them against each other, and they keep the war going, they keep the fight going by doing that. And what you got to do is extract yourself and get away from it, and just don't care, and certainly don't watch TV and watch it all. What most people believe are varying versions of the supplied programs. I mean, we are inside of the matrix, and it's interesting how the entertainment, how the movies and everything start to surface these ideas, so that you've got some coherent imagery about how it all works. All current and historical, social, and cultural institutions cannot be trusted. They've been deliberately withheld important information. There's all kinds of stuff now that are written about how history has all been manipulated, and it really wasn't what we thought it was and what we've been taught it was. And in particular, one big set of books written by this Russian statistician and 150 other scientists said, well, they shoehorned 1,500, the Catholic Church shoehorned 1,500 years into the middle of it just to make it work for what they were trying to do. And it really didn't exist, and it didn't happen. And I mean, it's crazy. So you feel powerless and inferior and inadequate and so on. But most of that comes from the outside. It comes from the outside, and that's an important point, because what we're going to try to say here is that the solution to this comes from the inside, and from you changing your mind, and from you taking control of your life, and taking control of your reality, and generating your own reality. It's a real big, interesting kind of shift, because we all sit and watch television and look at the games, and we do this and sports and the what, you know, all of those things are designed to just keep you in here and not thinking about these bigger kind of ideas and who you can be and who you are. Hopeless, John Rappaport, marvelous reporter, says hopelessness is an op. That's a military and an intel term for operation. No, hopelessness is an op, and it's planet-wide. This is contrived. It's been driven, and it's doing it, and the reason why is because it generates all this negative energy that those guys feed on, okay? That's the way kind of the whole thing works. But the absurdity of the current situation, this is Kingsley Dennis. A couple of you folks are friends of Kingsley Dennis, a friend of mine over in southern Spain, and Kingsley just wrote an essay the other day about the kind of the absurdity of what's going on, because my friend Gary here and I sit here and talk. When we talk on the phone, we talk about this. It's surreal. This is crazy. This is absurd. You know what's going on. There's no way you can make sense of it in conventional kind of terms. What Kingsley says is the absurdity of the current situation enables a breaking up of the controlling narrative. Because you've got to kind of break up the narrative in some kind of way, so people can so the light can come in, so people can see that there's another, and it allows the system to go find a new center. That's a really big idea in terms of the kind of the mechanisms and the dynamics of this transition from one era to another one, is that you're moving from one kind of solidified position, which is this kind of negative one, this contrived reality, into a new one, and it will come together and form a center, and that will be the essence of this new world. That's the animating, the core concepts and the ideas of the new world, but it doesn't show up until the old one kind of comes apart.